I'm Rachel Bell, and this is Your Last Meal, the show where celebrities share stories about the foods they love most, and we dig into the history, culture, and science of those meals with experts from around the world. Today on the program, Bear Grylls. Bear is a survivalist and extreme adventurer. He's hosted many TV shows, including the incredibly popular Man vs. Wild, Born Survivor, and Running Wild with Bear Grylls. On these programs, he gets up to shenanigans like eating a camel and then sleeping inside its carcass for warmth after removing the skin to use as a blanket. Once when he was in a Borneo jungle, he got bit by a snake. So he did what any of us would do. He promptly cut off its head, skinned it, and cooked it over a fire after tending to his wound with a wild yam plant.
I always say snake tastes like chicken. Tell you what, it doesn't.
And Bear often takes celebrities like President Obama and Julia Roberts along on his wild adventures. The new season of his National Geographic show, Running Wild with Bear Grylls: The Challenge, is out on July 9th. I was sent a screener of the show and almost had a panic attack watching him rappel down these craggy Scottish cliffs with actor Russell Brand, who, just like me, is deathly afraid of heights. Like I mentioned earlier, Bear eats and drinks some gnarly things.
Yeah, I forgot about the urine. Yeah, I should have mentioned that as well.
So today, we're going to talk about drinking pee-pee. There are folks in this world who do that by choice, even if they're not dehydrated and lost in a desert. And if you watch all the survivalist shows and dream of being dropped in the middle of nowhere with nothing but the clothes on your back, you can pay to have that experience. I chat with Kat Bigney, hunter-gatherer instructor and ancestral skills specialist. All of that coming up later in the show. But first, my conversation with Bear Grylls. Bear has been at this survivalist thing for a long time. He sharpened his skills during his 3 years in the British Special Forces, where he was a trooper, survival instructor, and patrol medic. And at 23 years old, he became one of the youngest people to summit Mount Everest. And now, on his TV shows, he eats a lot of gnarly stuff. Eating and staying hydrated is, of course, one of the biggest factors of surviving when you're out there in the wilderness. For folks who haven't seen any of your shows, can you give us a greatest hits of some of the wildest things that you have eaten and drank?
Oh, wow. Yeah. Well, first of all, I would preface all of this with, I'm not eating a lot of this stuff normally. This is in the name of survival. And when your life is on the line, those who make it through are those who dig deep and do sometimes the unimaginable. So there have been some horrors over the years, but once you're out there for a while, you get hungry. I don't know, probably a mix of like rat brain maybe, or frozen yak eyeballs, or camel intestinal fluids, raw snakes, tarantulas, scorpions, maggots. I mean, probably the worst was raw goat's testicles. That was bad. Skunk anus. It's like, there's a long list of stuff. I mean, amongst those have been a few good things. I've learned that if you skewer a scorpion over the fire for long enough, it's not going to taste so bad. I mean, occasionally, listen, I've been surviving on a desert island and caught lobster, and it's been great. But those times are pretty few and far between. Most of the time, it's a stinking jungle or a swamp, and it's raw, fast, on the go, chomp it down, keep moving.
Yeah, I saw you getting to enjoy a cactus fruit and was very happy for you.
Yeah, literally, it's been a handful of those. That was good. I should have remembered it. And some bees, some honey. But having said that, when I did try and get the honey, I also got nailed by a swarm of bees, and my face blew up like a absolute balloon. That's my kids, that's their fun thing to Google when they need a pick me up. My face after these bees. They tell me it's an improvement.
Do you ever sneak any little tiny culinary comforts into your pockets? Like I'll steal little salt packets, from In-N-Out Burger, and I'll bring like a tiny hot sauce packet when I'm backpacking. Do you sneak any of those things, or are you eating your eyeballs and your testicles just totally plain and raw?
No, I'm definitely always sneaking, and more than just a packet of salt. I'm always sneaking some energy bars in there, because you got to keep the stars going as well. They're rookies for this. Normally after about 3 or 4 hours, even the really fit ones, because there's so much adrenaline of fear and anticipation, they're always exhausted. And I always throw a few bars in with a crew as well, because I'm always just off camera saying to the guests, come on, just drink this whole thing of water. and rehydration salts, have this whole protein bar we're keeping going. And it's a key part of it. You got, it's tough out there for them. And I'm always respectful of that. And I feel I'm not there to break them. I'm there to build them and give them an amazing experience for the wild. And it's tough enough as it is already. And I never apologize for throwing in a few protein bars. Yeah.
Yeah, I read some criticism that, at one point you had stayed in a hotel and people found out. And it's like, well, it's still a show for entertainment. Like, you're not going to kill yourself or anybody else to make the show.
Well, that's true. Hopefully not. We're take the safety super seriously, but at the same time, it's always a small team. I read those articles 10 years ago about hotels, but we really are camping out and we really are in a cave. Where is the hotel?
How do you get used to that? I mean, do you get used to this? I mean, watching you eat these giant fish eyes and just they were so gunky and milky. And I mean, it was hard to watch. Do you get used to it, or do you still have to really force yourself and cringe?
I think, those bloody fish eyes are bad. I mean, I think a little bit you get used to it. I think it's more about getting used to the state of mind, that adventure survival state of mind that says survival's going to hurt, it's going to stink, it's going to be hard, it's not going to be fun. But sometimes you got to put your head down and just kind of keep going and do the difficult, face those fears, whatever it is. And I think eating some bad stuff is always going to be part of that. If you're going to escape from wherever you found yourself in a difficult situation, desert, jungle, mountain, you're going to need energy. To get energy, you're going to need food of some sort. But it is interesting, though, that the priority really is always water. You can last 3 weeks without food, but only 3 days without water. So, really in a survival situation, your priority is to get the fluids. And actually, if you're eating a lot of protein, that's just going to use up a ton of fluids. So even though eating is a part of it, it's lower down the list of priorities, really, which is you need water first.
Which brought me to my next question about drinking urine. I understand you've done that even with some of your celebrity guests.
Yeah, I forgot about the urine. Yeah, I should have mentioned that as well. I mean, yeah, there you go. Well, first of all, I'm definitely not one of those people who does that at home. And
good to know.
And there are some people. I mean, as you know, they're wacky people all over the world, but there are some firm believers in regular urine drinking. I'm not one of them, but I do know that urine, if you're well hydrated in the wild, can help save your life. And if you're short on the supplies and you're well hydrated, just to pee out super clear hydrated pee, you're going to be wasting a lot of that hydration. So really, you want to be collecting that and maybe mixing it with some of your water and drinking it, then spread up, making it last longer. I mean, if you're peeing out stinking brown dehydrated pee, that's pure waste product. But hydrated pee can help you, and there are many, many stories in the wild of that saving people's lives. And I've had to do it a whole bunch of times in the wild, including also just times where, sometimes I've been really dehydrated, so I know that the pee's not going to help me, but I can just soak my t-shirt in it and wrap that around my head, and that's like going to be nature's air conditioning unit. You got the breeze through the pee, and that's going to work. So yeah. What was the one? Is that what you were asking?
Yeah,
I have drunk it, and it's not very fun. Salty and not very fun. Warm.
There is a reason we don't all drink our pee. It is human waste. So is it safe to drink it? A Google search reveals all sorts of opinions, but the real medical websites like NYU School of Medicine don't recommend it. The outdoor gear company MSR, Mountain Safety Research, had their water research lab investigate, and they say drinking your own pee in a survival situation can do more harm than good. They write, not only will urine not rehydrate you, it will have the opposite effect and dehydrate you at a faster rate. Though mostly water, urine contains dissolved salts, minerals, and trace amounts of toxins from your liver. The more dehydrated you are, the higher the concentration of these pollutants are in your pee. If you're in a survivalist situation, you're likely extremely dehydrated and the concentrations are very high. Putting these pollutants back into your system can cause a buildup of toxic levels. MSR does say that it is possible to drink urine without getting sick. If you're healthy and fully hydrated and your pee is clear, you'll be fine. But that is not going to be the case in an emergency survival situation. Before talking to Bear, the only time I've ever heard of someone drinking their own pee was in a memoir called Yoga Bitch by Suzanne Morrison. I read this book about a decade ago, and that scene has lived rent-free in my brain ever since. When Suzanne was 25 years old and a little bit lost in her life, she started taking yoga classes at a Seattle studio. And she became enamored with her teacher, Indra. Indra was everything she wanted to be. So when Suzanne had an opportunity to attend a 2-month yoga retreat in Bali with her teacher, she immediately signed up.
The first day of class, my yoga teacher was telling us about how we could get the Bali belly, stuff in the water that's not going to agree with you. And she's like, it's like the Delhi belly or Montezuma's revenge. And you can get it just from like running your toothbrush under the tap or like being in the shower and you open your mouth a little bit and some water gets in there and then voila, you have the Bali belly. And she said, the thing about the Bali belly that's really nasty compared to some of these other bugs you can get as a tourist is that after you've been sick for days and days and days, your tongue turns black. Like you start leaching toxins out of your tongue. And she was like, but I have never had this experience because I drink my pee. And I was like, wait, what? I started looking around expecting other people to be like getting the church giggles like I'm getting, because I'm like, this is really funny. I think she's actually serious about this, but this makes no sense. And I realized like half of them are nodding. Like they're all just like nodding along like, yeah, of course. Like, of course, that's what you do. You drink your pee and then you don't get the Bali belly. Yeah. And that's when I was like, okay, I don't know where I am. I don't know who I am anymore. Like, what am I doing here?
But urine is also imbibed in other situations, not just to heal an ailment. Some folks who follow Ayurvedic practices drink it as a preventative or spiritual health tonic, sometimes every morning.
There's everything from this idea that the uric acid in urine breaks down toxins in your body and can like promote well-being that way. And then there's a really esoteric, spiritual idea about drinking pee, which is that you could literally just take one drop of your own pee and put it in water, and it has enough spiritual potency that it will heal you spiritually. But I learned a whole lot about the ideas that people have, like that it can solve everything from cancer to AIDS to baldness. Like it can regrow hair. Apparently, this is what some people believe. I don't believe that.
To be clear.
To be clear.
Suzanne went to Bali with a friend who went all in on this ritual.
My friend Jessica, who I adore, she was my roommate there. She doesn't drink pee anymore. She would sit on the patio in the sunshine and, like with the sun on her face and like take a sip, and she would drink out of this big Starbucks mug.
Oh, so this wasn't like a private thing that she would just shoot first thing in the morning. She was like, the best part of waking up is pee-pee in your cup out on the porch.
That's exactly it. And, she was really doing it. She was doing like the full 8 ounces. Like she had like the full Starbucks travel mug of pee every morning. It was just like this really peaceful, quite lovely to look at ritual where she would just like sit in the sun and commune with herself in this way.
So the big question is, did you drink your own pee at this yoga retreat?
I sure did. Only one time. And it was because I had gotten the Bali belly and I was terrified of this black tongue. I'm incredibly terrified of illness. I always think I have cancer. I always think I have something, right? I was like, I cannot get this black tongue. I'm so freaked out. I was desperate and I was like, I will try it. And it took me hours. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. And I finally did. And it was so it's just the strangest. I mean, how much detail do you want, Rachel?
Tell me.
Just the flavor is really nutty. It was really strange, and it kind of coats your mouth. Flavor was just like unlike anything else I'd ever tasted in my life. And then it was over, and I had done it. Then I went to sleep because I think I was like, I cannot live with myself. I have to go turn myself off now that I've done this gross thing. Went to bed, slept for hours and hours and hours, and I woke up and the Bali belly was gone. Like I was fine.
Wow. It's hard to know, but I mean, do you think that drinking the pee helped, or do you think it had just run its course coincidentally?
Or I'm very prone to suggestion, which I really truly am. Like I am like the perfect person for a snake oil salesman. I'm just very, very susceptible to the placebo effect, I think. So it could be that. It could be that it did a thing and worked. But I will say that the sort of byproduct that was actually really amazing for me was that I felt like I'd conquered some huge fear. That part was actually really great, where I was like, I just did something totally disgusting that I was really scared of doing, but I did it anyway. And I sort of felt like this high from it. Like I can do weird things. Like I can do crazy, like unusual, unconventional things and live to tell the tale. Like I still wouldn't ever like eat a maggot if I could help it. But it was an interesting experiment in terms of like, can I do this thing that is totally gross and totally weird? But I have no idea if that's what cleared it up or not. But I sort of wanted to believe it. I wanted to believe that it had done that because you want something like that to be worth it. Like,
Yeah, then you hadn't done it in vain.
exactly.
Yeah. I now feel suspicious of every single yoga teacher whose class I've taken, just thinking about people that are living amongst us, waking up in the morning and just, drinking a little bit of their pee. Like, how many people in our city are doing this every morning? I would love to know a number.
I moved to New York after this time in Bali, and I was working at a consulting firm as like an executive assistant. And I was doing my one-woman show because this book was originally a one-woman show called Yoga Bitch. And I was performing it in New York, and I brazenly invited like the whole consulting firm to my show, which is hilarious now to think about because, they're all fairly conservative and my show really isn't. Anyway, so this guy, I think he was a consultant, but he was also an opera singer. He came to see the show, and then the next day he found me, by the water cooler or whatever, and he was like, so what's funny? He's like, I drink my pee. And I was like, what? I was like, do you do yoga? What are you talking about? He's like, no. He's like, I'm an opera singer. And sometimes if I have a performance coming up and I feel like my throat's getting a little inflamed or scratchy, he said, I've just found that urine really helps. And he said he had a vocal coach who told him to do it once, and he never looked back. He said it really makes a difference.
My mouth is hanging open. That was a twist.
It was such a surprise.
Tomorrow morning, when you're out and about on your way to work, be suspicious of every single person you see sipping from a Starbucks mug. It may not be coffee in there. Did you guys make it? Did you make it through the pee segment? It's over now. We can move on. We're going to take a break, but when we come back, Bear tells me why he stopped eating vegetables, and of course, he shares his last meal. You were vegan for many years, and you have drastically changed your diet since. What are you eating these days when you're not in the wilderness, when you're at home?
Well, I was always a meat eater growing up, and then kind of probably about 10 years ago, I felt I'm going to try veganism. And I thought at the time that might be healthy, and I thought at the time that might be good for the environment. Time and education and experiences told me that it's not. And actually your health tanks often. For me, it certainly did. For many of my friends who have had similar experiences. And then I thought, hold on, I'm just going to look at nature more. What does nature do? What have we evolved in terms of evolution over hundreds of thousands of years to thrive? How is our health evolutionarily designed to thrive? And the answer is on red meat. Look at the indigenous people around the world. They fight, dream, laugh, joke, talk all day about the liver, of the animals they're hunting. It's prized as the best bit of it. They know the power of red meat and blood and milk and honey and fruit to sustain them and really help them to thrive and to be then well protected from UV and the sun and all of these things that have a knock-on effect to our health. And, sometimes they'll eat a few roots and a few leaves, but really for them, it's survival food in terms of food that really is going to help them thrive and be healthy. So I kind of just copied that. And actually, it's been eye-opening. My health I've just felt stronger, better, more alert. And so, yeah, I'm pretty strict with it. I try and just every day, meat, a little bit of liver, lots of fruit. I don't have veggies really. I kind of think they're full of defense chemicals designed to not encourage you to eat it. I don't have the wheat and all the sort of processed food and the gluten stuff that I think just messes with people's guts so much. Have quite a lot of honey, love that. And I'm feeling good and feeling strong. So that's been my journey. And as Churchill said, to improve is to change. So I have changed, but hopefully improved.
Quoting Churchill, I've found a true Englishman.
Yeah, no, there's always something. You could pull a Churchill one out for anything. I mean, get me onto any topic. We'll give you one of those.
Thank you. So let's talk about
you.
I know it's either that or
it's
either that or Paul McCartney, just waiting to see what's next.
There you go.
Let's talk about your last meal. What would you choose to eat for your last meal?
Well, last meal, that's interesting because, again, I think beforehand when I had a much more what I thought was healthy diet, having salads and everything, I was always craving like a cheat meal, which would just be kind of anything that I thought was delicious. And nowadays, because I'm eating all the delicious stuff, I actually don't really crave it. I'd probably, for my last meal, have all the stuff I really love. I eat a ton of butter. I love butter. I just don't really like the bread. I realize the bread is a cardboard. I love a really great burger, but I just don't really have the bun and the lettuce, but I love great, good quality grass-fed burgers covered in great cheese, avocado. I'd probably have that. I'd probably maybe have I really like apple crumbles, fruit crumbles. They're probably not so healthy because they got the wheat in them. I'd probably have one of those. It was my last one. Chocolate. I eat a lot of chocolate. I'd try not to have too much of it. If for my last meal, I'd probably really go for it on the chocolate. I probably wouldn't worry about the hangover. I'd probably have a few cocktails. In fact, it would probably help. Probably double the number of cocktails. But above all, my family, great friends. Life and great food is all about those moments shared together, aren't they? And the preparation, and then not feeling sick afterwards, which is what I'd always feel if I'd have a cheat meal and it was all terrible processed stuff. I'd feel terrible. Now this way, I have my last meal every day. Really, that would probably be it.
So a cheeseburger with a stick of butter on the side.
Yeah. I mean, it'd be a few cheeseburgers and a few sticks of butter, some great cheese, avocado, homemade mayonnaise, awesome. Maybe some really good sushi and ceviche. I love that. And then we'd hit into the crumble, the apple cobbler. I think you call it in America. Fruit cobbler. Is that what you call it?
Well, I actually have done a lot of research on this. Well, that's an exaggeration, but there's crumbles, there's crisps, there's buckles, there's all these different names, and they're all slightly different. Are you talking about the one that has kind of like an oatmeal brown sugar butter topping?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the cobbler in America.
A cobbler for us has more of a biscuit topping, and for us, biscuit meaning like a bread, not a cookie. Oh my God. Apparently we speak such different English. We can't talk about dessert.
Well, two nations divided by a common language. And I spent a lot of time in the States and I've got the cobbler wrong then. So yeah, crumble is the kind of oatmeal with honey and butter and all of that as a topping. Awesome. So maybe custard as well. I love custard. Do you have custard in America? Yeah, you custard.
Like a ice cream or a pudding. Again, the dessert is really tearing these two nations apart.
I know. When a custard is the hot, yellow, creamy sauce that you put on top of the crumble.
Whipped cream?
I'd probably go a clotted cream as well. Do you do clotted cream?
No.
Oh, wow. You guys are missing out. Clotted cream is cream that is so thick you could almost, throw it around. It's it's amazing. You never had scones and jam and clotted cream?
I think I had it once when I had high tea in Victoria or visiting England. Yes, with the tiny sandwiches really with the crust cut off.
Yeah. Awesome. Clotted cream. I'd have a ton of clotted cream. Thing is, I eat so much of this stuff anyway. And I always used to think, it's going to be so bad for your heart and bad for your thing. I had my bloods done the other day. I have zero inflammation, which was way better than it was before. And the irony is I have so much saturated fat. And it's like, hold on, all this stuff I was told beforehand, I'm not sure I trust a lot of that government advice any longer. So you can only go by your own experience, can't you? But what I do know is that you'll have a lot of listeners who'll be going, I get it. You'll probably have an awful lot who'll be going, you're crazy, you're going to die. But there is a lot of people that are kind of getting into this ancestral way of living, a natural way, and thriving and doing well off it. So we'll see.
For his last meal, Bear Grylls wants a few grass-fed burgers with good cheese, avocado, and homemade mayonnaise. He wants an apple crumble, some chocolate, and a few cocktails enjoyed with his friends and family. It is so funny trying to talk about desserts with a Brit. As anyone who watches the Great British Bake Off knows, we speak two different Englishes when it comes to sweets. And for me, the most confusing one that I actually had to look up to tell you this information for this episode is the word pudding. So, of course, in America, pudding to us is a creamy custard, usually chocolate, vanilla, or butterscotch. But in England, pudding is just a generic term for dessert. Let's have a pudding after dinner. I'm so sorry to everybody who is British. I will never do that again. So, number one, a pudding can be a generic term for dessert, but a pudding is also specifically a steamed or boiled dessert like Spotted Dick, which is a steamed cake with a funny name that Heinz sells in a can. I know this because a listener sent me a can of Spotted Dick many years ago, and I kept it on my desk for a decade. A pudding can also be a blood sausage. And a pudding can be a dessert that used to be steamed or boiled, but is now baked, like sticky toffee pudding. You guys got that? Not confusing at all. I'm hoping we'll have the chance to do an entire episode on British desserts in the future. Right now on TV, there are a lot of popular reality shows where people get dropped into the wild alone and are challenged to simply survive. If this intrigues you, but you are way more of a car camper who survives on s'mores and chips and sleeps on an air mattress when you're out in the woods, there are courses around the nation that can teach you how to adventure a little bit more like Bear.
My name is Kat Bigney, and I am an ancestral skills specialist. I specialize in cognitive archaeology, recreation of primitive tools, and ancient tattoo techniques.
Kat has been an instructor at Utah's Boulder Outdoor Survival School for 23 years. She's done a ton of survivalist consulting for various film and TV projects, including The Island with Bear Grylls, which was a total coincidence. I had no idea that she had worked with Bear when I reached out.
Yeah, I worked with him close to 10 years ago. He's phenomenal. He's such an incredibly gracious, kind, supportive person. And when I was working for him, I think he was filming maybe 4 other projects or 5 projects. So the man was literally exhausted, and he still made time for everybody. It's really exhausting stuff. In fact, the first time I met Bear, this is funny, but the first time I met Bear, I was a little confused because I was like, okay, we're friends. He's really nice, but is he winking at me? And then I realized he was just so tired because he'd just flown in from another project that he needed to sleep. And I think he was just having a little twitch that he needed to go to bed.
Little lazy eye moment. Kat grew up in a remote region of the Wasatch Mountains in Utah.
Yeah, I mean, I had a very atypical upbringing. So a lot of the things that are considered to be survival skills were part of my daily chores. So things like hunting and making a daily fire to stay warm were just it wouldn't be uncommon for me to have to process half of a deer at any given point in time growing up. I mean, I cooked often on a wood cook stove. If I ever was not in this home, my sister and I had a teepee that we would just stay in. And it was just part of our life. And we didn't attend public school until much later, I think, in life. I have a college degree, but I didn't go to public school. My formative years were spent, my education was spent in the mountains hunting.
Things haven't changed that much. Kat is currently living in a teepee on land that belongs to the Boulder Outdoor Survival School, which is also known as BOSS. BOSS has a hunter-gatherer course where folks spend 4 days studying and making Stone Age tools. And then they go out into Grand Staircase Escalante National Monument for 9 days with a group and a guide, but no food or modern equipment. Kat teaches BOSS's Primitive Living Intensive course, which is similar.
Essentially, we are taking groups of people, teaching them everything that they would need to know in terms of skill, and then creation and fabrication of, let's say, tanning a sheep hide, fashioning pottery, weaving a basket, and just essentially creating a tool set that is quote unquote primitive, and going out into an environment in the context of like the ancestral pueblo, and that's what this landscape is, and then living off the land. So we have this really romantic idea that like, you know, enough, you can walk out in nature and just survive, but that's not actually true. For example, right now in Southern Utah, we've had a really wet year. So there's so much life. There's so much abundance. So there's so many things that we'll be able to harvest, that we can harvest. And the animal life, the population is booming. For this year anyway, there's a lot of food. But that isn't always the case. Like we just got out of a 10-year drought. And that was very often the case in this region. And so people developed strategies to grow corn here, because we will supplement sometimes with like dried corn or things that would have been appropriate in years when maybe we don't have a big acorn harvest.
How long do you take people out for, and what do you bring out? Like, I mean, are you doing anything like sleeping bags?
We head out on the expedition phase of this primitive intensive and kind of hike to a primitive village. That's our hub. I allow whatever people have prepared plus the clothing on their back. So no sleeping bags, no knives, no lighters, no flashlights. Typically people have a canteen made out of a gourd or a horn or, you know, a piece of pottery. Everyone's made a piece of pottery to cook in, a fire set, a collection of stone tools, an animal hide to use as a blanket. And let's see, usually a pitch stick that's glue to do repairs, sinew, animal tendon to use for repairs, maybe a fishing net, basically whatever we've had time to create in the week prior.
And how do they carry all that out there?
That's a great question. So typically I'll teach my clients how to make a pack using their animal hide. Either they can use a piece of their clothing as straps, or we'll have like a woven strap that they'll teach them how to weave or braid to carry it. And then we'll take off.
Yeah. So give an example from in this region. Let's say like it's this year, a year of bounty. What kind of things might you come back with on a really good day?
Acorns, maybe a marmot, tons of fish. We could also hunt rabbit. The cottontails are really great. It's a little bit like, it's difficult because they carry diseases when it's warmer. Definitely could come back with berries, acorns, and pinyon pine nuts, which are amazing because it's a source of fat that is not animal derived and super rare. Those are some of the food staples. Also, like Indian rice grass is a grain that was staple food for the indigenous people a long time ago, and it's really nutritious and delicious. A lot of green edibles, tubers. And it's amazing. I've traveled around the world and there's nothing to replace local indigenous knowledge. Like the people who were living in this area that we considered, what we call the Anasazi or ancestral Pueblo, and they were smart and they had resources. And even though it seems like a barren desert, if you think about like all of the tools they had, stones to grind their grains with, tools to make hunting tools with, they had the ability to reroute water. They had corn that they learned to cultivate. But it's pretty incredible how like need drives innovation and resourcefulness. And one thing that I love about the hunter-gatherer and the primitive living intensive, we get to see the things that people come up with using primitive gear and primitive technologies to solve problems, especially in food acquisition.
I'm curious what kind of people come out and do this course, because I'm thinking of it in terms of if it was a movie, and I can imagine some, you know, super rich CEO of a company who likes to push himself to extremes. Who goes on these trips?
Like everybody. Sometimes it's people that have experience in like primitive skills and survival that want to deepen their knowledge. And other times I've literally had clients that have never camped a day in their life.
That's crazy. They're like, no, we don't want to go to a national park first. We're just going to go straight into acorns.
But I love that because there's so much openness. They don't have preconceived notions about how it's done. They tend to experiment more. I think it's fun.
Do you notice in the time when you're out with people that the longer they're gone from technology and comforts, that their intuition does start to kick in more and more?
1,000,000%. This summer, I'm leading a 28-day field course for Boulder Outdoor Survival School. And I love that length of time. It's really hard to commit to, but even in 14 days, I find that people start to change. Their awareness changes. They start to like sense humidity changes in the air. Their whole sense is involved. That you don't have to tell them to become more in tune with the land, but things start to open up. They start to connect. They start to understand water like an animal would.
Like Bear, Kat has eaten all kinds of funky wild things on her expeditions.
Just because something's edible doesn't mean it's good. This is a horrible story, but I'll just be honest and tell you. I was on a TV project in Panama and I was working with one of the producers and they said, well, do you eat insects? And I was like, well, I've had a couple ants like here and there. I've tried them, but I don't really eat insects. He's like, well, would you? And I said, well, sure, why not? And so I saw these giant cockroaches and I was like, well, he's like, what about one of those? And he was like, it was great for TV. And I was like, all right, well, I'll try it. but I know that they carry parasites. So let me just cook it first. The camera's on and I'm talking about how like insects could save the world, and that if we started consuming insects, how great they would be for us, and that like they're so prolific. And so I gave this amazing spiel about how great insects could be. And then I took this like 2-inch cockroach and put it in my mouth. And the second my teeth hit it, I knew I was in trouble. And like the whole thing just exploded in my mouth. I tasted this amazing, like horrible exoskeleton insect, very specific protein taste. And I immediately started to throw up. And mind you, this is on camera after giving this spiel about how great eating insects would be. So I've worked in other TV projects, and it's part of my like agreement that I won't do it because I know I'll throw up. I know it's a horrible story.
Oh, no, I love this story. I thought you were just going to say that you like made a face or something, not that you just started immediately throwing up. Oh my God, you gave them better TV than they thought that they were getting. So much better.
Great. And so there's so many times like that where I'm just like, I'd rather fast. And which is interesting is because our bodies actually are built to fast. That our bodies will click over to something called glyconeogenesis. And it was where we essentially are self-cannibalized. So there are times when I'm out and I'm like, this isn't ideal to eat. There's not much food here. It's really like a bad situation, but hopefully in a couple of days, there's something more ideal. So that even though like I've been doing this my entire life and I have a great knowledge for it, that doesn't mean that like I don't go days fasting. Like there are times when you just can't find food, times when you just can't find water. And when you do, you come up with ways to store it, to preserve it, and to eat what you can.
So when you're finding yourself fasting for multiple days because you can't find anything, is this something that might happen when you're out with a group, or because you have these clients, do you always make sure that they can eat? Is this something when you're on like a personal expedition?
Oh, no, I'm really honest with people. Like they may go without food. Survival courses that I run are engineered anyway. So like I'm aware of where we're going and what resources are there. So at some point I kind of build in safety nets. Like I may know a great fishing hole where there's good opportunity, but maybe we'll fail. Maybe there's a great place. I think we can spear some marmot, but maybe it just won't work. And so that's always like a risk. I've found that when people are hungry, they're resourceful. I think the first few days are typically a pretty light in food, but as we're getting sort of established as a community, we end up eating so much by the end. Processed acorns, like it's not always food that you love. Like I think processed acorns are kind of bland. I wish, there was wild garlic growing in my region, but they're edible. And so it's food. And like, I think my standards for like delicious food sort of goes down the longer I'm out.
Have you had to drink your own pee when you're out and you can't find water?
Oh God, no, I don't drink urine, and I don't think it's smart. I think it's so gimmicky. By the time you're dehydrated enough to drink your pee is toxic.
What is a food that you crave the most after you come back from, let's say, like a 28-day expedition?
This is so horrible, but typically some kind of like fizzy cold soda, like something that's like super refreshing. Like a Sprite or something, or I'd even drink a Diet Coke, anything that's like bubbly and cold.
If Fred Flintstone likes Fruity Pebbles and gummy vitamins, Kat definitely has permission to enjoy a Sprite after 28 days of eating acorns and squirrel in the desert. Time for a quick break, but when we return, Bear and I talk about his butt cheeks. I mean, why not? We've already talked about pee and eating eyeballs and cockroach regurgitation, but I promise you that this story is not gross. We'll be right back. Can you very quickly tell me the story of how you proposed to your wife and specifically where you had the ring stored?
Well, this is an example of misinformation.
Okay.
But I did propose. I was skinny dipping in the sea, and but it was a spontaneous proposal. I didn't have a ring. I don't know how this story came back. I think a journalist said, "Where did you keep the ring?" And I jokingly went, "What do you mean? Of course, in the butt cheeks." But no, I didn't have a ring, and I didn't keep it in the butt cheeks. So, but we did get engaged, skinny dipping together in the sea, and it was unprepared, no ring. We had to then go and find a ring, and then the adventure began.
I'm so glad I'll be able to tell the world the truth about where the ring was not.
There you go. I'd be grateful.
You recently offered the president of the Ukraine a little bit of chocolate when you were having an interview together. What happened when you offered him that chocolate?
Well, it's funny because it wasn't like I was taking him into the wild, where the wild sort of, is a great leveler, and this was different. We were in a war zone in a city, high tension all the time, and I thought maybe I'll just take a chocolate bar and we'll just sit and eat chocolate for a bit because that's always leveler. So I did that, but his security was suddenly a bit nervous of like, hold on, am I trying to poison the president? So I had to go, no, I'm not. There's nothing bad in this chocolate. This is good. So I ate some chocolate first, and it was all great. It was all fun. We laughed. He was, it was an amazing privilege to do and get to hear his story and his journey and his life and how he's coping and his family. And it was a privilege to be able to go there and shine a light on some of this stuff.
And that was Bear Grylls' last meal. The new season of Running Wild with Bear Grylls, The Challenge, is out July 9th on National Geographic.
Bradley Cooper was amazing. I got to adventure with him in Wyoming in wintertime. It was a hard one. Benedict Cumberbatch in Scotland, a really incredible journey with him. Ended up on a nuclear submarine at the end. Russell Brand, a hilarious episode. One of the favourite ones I've ever done, just in terms of laughing a lot. Rita Ora in the desert was amazing in Nevada. Really proud of how they did. They dug deep. They faced a whole ton of fears. That light in their eye and that pride at the end of it is something you can't buy.
Thanks to Suzanne Morrison, author of Yoga Bitch.
Have you ever used a neti pot?
I haven't, but I know what they are.
So that was another thing that they did with pee. So it goes up one nostril and out the other, and it just like cleans everything out.
Yeah, it's going through your sinuses.
Exactly. And I was like, but then it gets to your brain.
Yeah, you don't want pee in your brain.
I'll pee in my brain.
No, all of this just provokes so many childhood insults like pee
my
brain. And
I know.
Thanks to Kat Bigney, head survival instructor at Boulder Outdoor Survival School. You can find a link to their courses in the show notes. I just realized 2 of our 3 guests have animal names. Thanks, Kat and Bear. Thank you so much for listening. If you liked the show, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. It is a free way to support the show that really does make a difference. You can follow along on Instagram. I'm Hello Rachel Bell, Belle, and find a link in the show notes to subscribe to my free Substack newsletter. I'm Rachel Bell, and this is Your Last Meal. Hi, Bear.
Nice
Where are you? Oh,
nice
are
to
you
hear
there?
you. All right?
Yeah, sorry about that.
It's a whole new me.
A whole new you, but you're still drinking pee, so you're the same as ever.
As my friend said yesterday when I told her I was going to be talking to you about this, she was like, a moment on the lips, a lifetime on the podcast.
Oh my God.
This drinking.
Yeah, we just have to get that to rhyme and then we can copyright and trademark it.
Sorry to be so disgusting, but I was like, that's the grossest thing I can imagine is to throw up your own pee. So aren't you glad you had me on for this?
Well, I have editing powers, so I'm like listening going, what do I keep? It is a food podcast, but I do think it's interesting. I'm not sure what I'm going to keep. Boop, 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 boop.